First, just a subtle reminder that the school year's ending soon.
No.
Yeah. And only what's done by 5 p.m. on Friday, the last Friday in April, will be counted toward your grade other than the final exam. So we have a number of people who've missed a lab. You have to make up the labs. So you need to get with me and find time so we can get those made up so you can have those, count toward your grade instead of counting as zeros, which is decidedly not what we want to happen. Question?
I was noticing this morning when I was looking at my grade, I could be confused. For the potential test question category, are they automatically the rest of them in as zeros until we turn them, until we finish the semester, or are they blanks and they're not supposed to be zeros? Because I have all A's in the category, but then it says the average is a B, so I'm very confused on that.
I will have to look at it. I thought that it wasn't counting ones that. Oh yes. It is counting all of them, but we have the ones. I think it's counting all of them, but we have the ones that I graded and given to him 5 minutes ago that aren't recorded.
So then if it dropped.
I know. You're so setting your ways that I just.
It's gonna. Yeah, I think it's how it's set. What were you saying, Eric?
Are you dropping 3 or are you dropping 5?
I think it's 5 total.
The rule says 3, but the syllabus.
Yeah, because we're not all the way through the semester. I try to phase them in so you don't, say, "Oh, I'm fine," and then find out you're not. So yeah, and so there's a number of categories where I do things like that, where I phase it in. Okay, today's lab is not an experiment. It's just drawing and thinking type things. And so what we're doing is the reading the rock record. We're looking at the data that geologists get from the fossil record and how they sort it. So we have a nice long introduction. Of course, I'm not going to just sit here and read the introduction. I'm pretty certain everyone here is capable of sitting down and reading it, which you should. If you have any questions as you're going through doing the process, your answers are up here. But what we're going to have is a piece of a segment of what you would see if you dig down in different places. So we have gaps. Notice it says even the Grand Canyon does not exhibit complete and continuous geologic history. You have some unconformities where you have missing layers, where you have gaps. And so we're going to look at rock outcrops and compare them. So here is an example of rock outcrops you might find 3 different places. So this is like, say you're driving down the freeway and you pass a road cut and you look over in the road cut and you see these different layers. And then 50 miles later, you pass another road cut and you look at the layers and you write them down. Another 100 miles, you see a different set of layers. And then you're going to try to make sense of how they correlate. And so if you look at these pictures, they've tried to show graphically the differences. So you have this one here has little starburst type things. And we don't see that anywhere else. So it's not repeated anywhere. This one here has dots that are kind of randomly distributed. This one has dots that are randomly distributed. And so they have drawn a line here on top and bottom showing this is the same layer going from one to the next. And then likewise, this is the same layer going from one to the next. And then you see, this one also, same layer. This one also, same layer. But then, we had a layer missing in A that was present in B. And if we go down, you can see that there is one more line that I didn't show. I don't have enough information to know that that has to go there. But there I've completed it. Now these lines, I was going over this with Alex before lab. These lines should show us where each layer goes. And so I could take this and I could say, okay, I have these layers that you could name, give them names like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, over here I don't have one, but I have another one, so I'll call it 6. It didn't appear in the first one. And here I have 2, 3, 4. Uh-oh, that one wasn't there. 7. You know, you can go through and you can name them. And then you can say, okay, I have a line that separates 2 and 3, line that separates 1 and 2, and I can go through and I can trace where each one is. Where is 6 in the first outcrop? It's not there. Alex decided that it was easiest to think of it as being infinitesimally thin right there. Why is it not there? What'd you say? Okay, one good possibility is erosion. Maybe it was there, but eroded away. We talked about that in class yesterday. There's another option. It could have been that during the time frame when layer 6 was being deposited, outcrop A was not in a good environment for sedimentation. Right? If you're on the side of a hillside, you're not going to have sediment building up. So it could have been that during that time, outcrop A just wasn't in the right environment. So there's good reasons why some may be missing. Now there's fossils that are in these as well. This does not show them with fossils, but the fossils, we have indicator fossils, fossils that only lived in certain time ranges. And so we're going to have for our lab something that's a little more complex to look at. Pretty sure there is a way for me to rotate just this page. Page manipulation, rotate. I want clockwise. There we go. Woohoo, something worked. I did this on, oh yeah. So here's what we have for the working part of the lab. So you're going to come here, and the first thing you're going to notice you have now pictures of fossils in the layers. Also, they labeled the layers. So you have M, L, D, Z, X. S was not in the first one. C was not in the first one. B was not in the first one. P, but they have them all labeled. When I started doing this, I didn't notice the labels. You know how it is, you jump in, don't read anything. I didn't even notice those labels, and I was like, well, what's the difference in these two sand layers? They look exactly the same as far as I can tell. And then I said, well, they do have little different fossils, and then I noticed one's marked B and one's marked D. Probably only one other person at most would have made the silly mistakes I made of not seeing the B and the D. But you're going to come here, and you're going to draw the lines just like was done previously. Now, I recommend that the first thing you do is just connect the line. So bottom of M and top of M, bottom of M and top of M. Nowhere to go, right?
No.
Yes, it's got to be above S because M was above S. And it's got to be below L. So it goes like that. So that layer should have rightly been right here. Right, so go through and mark the ones that you can identify first. And you might go to the next step and then come back and mark the others as you think things through and get more done. So go through and just mark the lines as you can. There are little protractors in the drawers at the end of the table so you can have a straight edge if you want. Then the next step will be to assemble what is the complete order. And it actually reminds you P is the bottom. Right? It tells you P is the bottom. I'll draw that one there as well. So now you're going to take this here and break it off into 9 segments. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so there I have 9 segments. And which one is on the bottom? No, of the letters of the alphabet in my 4 different regions, my 4 different outcrops. Which is the earliest in all of them? It had to be one of those 3. Let's take a vote. How many people vote for M?
You said the bottom, right?
Yes. How many people vote for S? 2. How many vote for P? Okay. Most people went with P, and P is correct. How do I know P is correct? Well, number one, it does tell you in the instructions that P is the correct one. But also, we see that P is below S, and these are based on the idea that the newer layers are always on top of the older layers. That means P must be older than S. And as we go across, we have S is under M, so it has to be PSM for the bottom. Now, that's all I'm going to say right now because, of course, I don't want to do the entire lab for you. I mean, we're like 1/3 done already.
Confused about what you're looking for.
Yes. Okay, Haley, you said you're confused about what we're looking
Where
for?
are we?
Where we are on page 299.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So like for on the first row,
Uh-huh.
D. So it would go between C and M.
Because we don't have D there, I wouldn't draw anything until we have more information. Right after you put they were in the stack of stuff you had.
What?
You're talking about the
Copies?
yeah.
Oh, I need copies.
Yes, Alex has them.
I didn't even know I had them.
Yes. I gave him a handful of stuff. It should have been there. And you,
It's not here.
It's not-
in the
okay.
stack that's right in front of you.
Alex has them. Yes. I thought I gave you both of them. Apparently not.
Can I make them?
Okay, so on the first to second, we don't have Z or D in region 2, and we don't have B or C in region 1. So I would just draw like this for the first cut, and then after we do the next parts, I would come in and fill in the rest. You do have to fill in the rest, but it's easier, I think, if you do the next part of putting them in order before you fill in the lines and you don't know exactly which way they're going to go. So you go through here and you lay them out, making sure that you have a sequential order that always fits. And like I said, I'm not going to just do it for you because then that means that you didn't learn anything. You have to go through the process to figure out how it fits. Then the next step is identifying which one of these eras each of those is. So now if we look at P, what fossils do we have in P? None. What does that tell me? It just tells me nothing. Because there's no fossils there, I just don't know anything about when it is. So I just know it's my earliest one.
So you could really do the bottom part first and then do the top part.
Do the bottom part first.
Oh,
I'm
like
not-
figuring out which era it was in because of the fossils.
Yeah.
Yes, you could do that first. But you're supposed to put their eras beside them over here in this column where it says figure 2.
Yeah.
So it's most useful to have them lined up before you do that so you can do that. And you will find that there's at least one, and there's a question about it, where you have to have done which layer's older, which one's newer before you can get the right answer. So let's just look at S. In S, we have 2 kinds of fossils. What kind of fossils do I have here? Stromatolite.
Oh, just kidding. Oh.
So now if I look down here, my stromatolite, right, this is what that thing is. The stromatolite and the trilobite overlap in 2 different eras. And so what can I tell about the time frame for S? It's not Silurian. It has to be before Silurian because the trilobites disappear by the time you get to the Silurian. It could be either Cambrian or Ordovician, right? My box includes both Cambrian and Ordovician. And so for that one, I'm going to put C or O. I put C or O because it's easier. Now, anyone with a brain knows that there's two C's, Carboniferous and Cambrian. But they're at significantly different times. You're not going to get confused between the two C's. So I'm happy to just use C and know that it's the one that's appropriate for where you are. So that's Cambrian or Ordovician. What does that tell you now about P that had no fossils in it?
That's probably before that.
Okay, it's before that. Now, Cambrian or Ordovician, we don't know. It could have been in the Ordovician, and the P could have also been Ordovician. We can't say that P has to be Cambrian because, Ordovician was included in the one above. So I have to put Cambrian, and we have the crash. Crashes occur when I do things like the rotation of the page. It sets something running that makes it unhappy. So I'm going to put C or O again for the P layer. It has no fossils at all, but based on P being below S and S being C or O, it has to be younger than C or O, or within it, including those. And so I went down to the bottom. So going from O down to the bottom gave me C or O. And so you're going to go for each one of these, and you're going to label what time period each one of them is. Now, that's the end of the work part of the lab. The rest is just answering questions. After you've put these layers in, I would come back to problem part 1. Because after you've determined the order M, L, D, Z, how these lay out, then you'll know where you have missing layers. And where you have a missing layer, you should have something like a V. So here, there's a missing layer, and see we have a V going away from it. So when you draw your lines, you know how you're going to draw the lines to make those missing layers show up. Okay, now back to instructions. We've done all of the work part. Now we just answer questions. List the missing rock layers for each region. So you should have region 1, which layers are missing. Region 2, which layers are missing. Region 3, which layers are missing. Region 4, which layers are missing. There's only 3 missing in 4. There's 4 missing in the others. Then number 2, the appearance of identical fossils in each of the sections facilitates the correlation of rock layers between outcrops. We just went through that. The reptile in 3 of the outcrops is not present in region 1. Right, the reptile is there. It's supposed to be right there. I don't know if your book has a better image than my book did, but yeah, I couldn't see it there at all. Can you see it in yours, Maggie?
It looks like it didn't print right in the book. You can't really see some of that.
That's what I'm thinking.
Mary?
It-
Oh, yeah, you're right.
I thought this was intentional for them to look faded.
No,
I
I think it's just very poor printing. I mean, what fossils in this region? God only knows, right?
Which one?
The one I just circled here.
What about?
It's supposed to be the same as what you have here, but it does not look like it. Okay, so we have the reptile. I've circled the 3 places the reptile. It's not in region 1. And so your question is, why don't we have the reptile in region 1? And so that's the question you're answering. Our particular fish fossil is found in layers Z and X and has a time range spanning from Devonian to Permian. That is, fish fossils are seen there, Devonian to Permian. And then it asks us, how do we assign the time layer for X, or the time for layer X, if the fish fossils could be in any of those 3 time layers? So that's something you'll be able to figure out. I want to add some wording, well, one word for question 4. Question 4, I think, is a little ambiguous. There are several rock layers that have more than one designated time period. Name these layers. So we just saw 2. S and P both have 2 possible time frames they could be. And so you're going to have a list here. S, P, well, let's put it in order. P was the bottom one. So P, S, and the other ones that have more than one time periods that could exist. And then it says, how can fossils extending over more than one time period be found in one rock layer? I'm adding a word, found in only one rock layer. Because, that saying that how could a fossil that existed from, over all time, like stromatolites, how could we have stromatolites that existed over all time and find them in a rock layer? Well, they existed. Of course you could find it there. But the question is, if they existed in all the time frames and we only find them in one of the layers, how does that work out? So that's what the question is getting at. Why isn't it present in all of the layers that it's time, so basically why are stromatolites not shown in every single one of these? Since stromatolites should be present in every single one according to our time, we have fossils for stromatolites in all of them. So that's what that question is out. And then the last question, and then you're done. There are many different types of fossils in our hypothetical rock layers. What do the majority of these fossils have in common? Think habitat and environment. That hint is going to take you away from what Alex thought. Alex was looking at, a lot of these have something hard. Yeah, think about the environment. You could all say, they're all animals. The environment. Right? If you say they're all animals, that's not going to give you the points. That's the end of the lab. Questions?